Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pestikas. I'm so glad you're here. With the Brave Women at Work podcast, you'll get the resources and tips along with real-world stories and humor to empower and inspire you to take bolder and braver actions in your career and life. Welcome to the Brave Women at Work podcast. This is your host, Jen Pestikas. I'm so glad you're here. Well, hey everyone, how are you doing out there? So quick Pestikas household update, shall we? I thought 2025 was going to be a bit slower. Can I get a wrong with a capital W? It's been a shot out of a cannon type of a year so far. I've been traveling more than normal for work, so it's been a bit hectic. So if you've ever had any chaos or a busy season, here's a tip for you. So when I was traveling for work, I rediscovered something. I used to travel for work quite a bit before kids, right? Before the kiddos. And I would take these short detours to do something just nice for myself. It could be, I'm going to get a pedicure. I'm going to get a manicure. And one of the things I forgot is that I love exploring like new places, new neighborhoods, and just getting curious. It fills up my cup more than a manicure, more than a pedicure, more any of those like traditional self-care kind of things. But just like seeing new environments really like lights me up. So I forgot about this for the longest time, but it just helps me feel great during my busy times. So I'm starting with my Pestikas household and kind of life update. But what is that for you? And what is a way that you can fill your cup like a rest station or kind of like a gas station? And it's just a friendly little PSA so you don't end up entirely drained and, burned out or burnt out. After all, like as I'm recording this, we're in February. So every day, the year is a marathon, not a sprint. And even every day is kind of a marathon in of itself and, not a sprint. So I say conserve and replenish your energy. So, besides that PSA, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about shiny object syndrome. Why? Because I need it. I need it. It goes part and parcel with the Pestikas household update. So, you're going to come along on the ride with me. I'm hopeful this is beneficial for you as well. But before we get into a shiny object syndrome, if you are enjoying the podcast, Brave Woman at Work, please be sure to share it with a family member, a friend, and a colleague. I just want to get this honestly in the hands of more women. I feel it's part of my life's purpose. So if we can get this in the hands of more women so they can feel inspired, they can feel motivated to take braver and bolder action in their careers and lives, I would just thank you. And then, of course, if the show has made an impact on you, please be sure to share those ratings and reviews to help us continue to gain traction and grow. So we want to hear those. Give me those 5-star ratings, people. Those 5-star ratings and any reviews, really. I want to hear your feedback so that I can continue to show up better for you and this show. And then if you haven't downloaded my freebies from my website, check them out at bravewomanatwork.com. So those freebies are 24 career and leadership affirmations, 5 ways to managing your imposter syndrome, and getting paid, 10 negotiation tips. And then my last update before we jump into the juicy content today is I have a little offering called the Brave Circle. And the Brave Circle is simply this. It's a safe space for women that are looking to explore coaching to see how it could benefit them in a group coaching offering. It is a monthly coaching meeting with a small curated group of women who are very similarly like you, mid-career, trying to get to the next level in their careers, maybe facing headwinds or challenges. And we always do better when we do it together. And so I am in there and we are going through each woman's particular situation. Each woman gets a voice and can speak up and share what's going on in their career and lives. And I get so much out of our monthly meetings, and I'm sure you would as well. Also included in the Brave Circle is a private podcast called The Brave Circle with yours truly. And then finally, we do semi-annual planning sessions so you stay on track. So it's not just about talking about
your headwinds, talking about your goals, but actually planning them out, and then we can take action together. So again, you can learn about the Brave Circle also on my website where those freebies are. So let's talk about some shiny object syndrome and how it hurts us, shall we? So, shiny object syndrome, I did a good old fashioned Google search, and I wanted to start there in the event that you are new to this topic or you've never heard of shiny object syndrome. So, I'm going to read it from Google. So, that's the source of this. So, shiny object syndrome, or SOS, which I found hilarious. I was just like, oh, SOS is right, is the tendency to be distracted by new ideas or opportunities, often at the expense of current tasks. So it can affect people in many contexts, including business, personal development, and relationships. And I was like, yep, that's me. So I don't know if that's you, but let's kind of keep on diving in. So let me give you an example on how it can look. So you're working on a project, it doesn't matter what it is, and you get another idea that is what you perceive even better than what you're working on. You decide to pursue that idea, and now you have two open projects going at the same time. Do you feel me? And then you may be afraid of missing out or having FOMO, fear of missing out about this new idea. So you don't want to say no to it. So you think you can handle both ideas at the same time. So, what are some symptoms of shiny object syndrome? So, the symptoms are the constant starting of new projects, but rarely finishing them, difficulty focusing, a never ending to do list because all you do is keep adding more and more projects or more ideas, and then getting more excited about new opportunities and implementing existing strategies. So I looked up, like, who is this common for? So I was like, oh, it said, and I was like, yep, this is for my people, high achievers. I'm like, ding, entrepreneurs. Some of you have a side hustle. Leaders, ding, you guys are all leaders. Creatives who get a thrill from new ideas. That's definitely me. I'm sure that's many of you. So there's a lot of us in this group. So if you're thinking, okay, well, what's the problem? Like, what's the problem? Like, you're excited by new ideas. So, like, what can this lead to? So, the shiny object syndrome can give you an inability to say no, which we talk a lot about here on the show. The idea of like no boundaries, no filters, just keep on taking on, taking on, taking on. The inability to know when enough is enough, just like there is no off switch. The inability to establish and hold boundaries. All of these are related. It is a surefire path to burnout. And I only say that because I know it. And I am here. Part of my life's purpose is to help us not go there. So the basis of this podcast is going to be exploring different tips that I have to manage shiny object syndrome if it this SOS, if this syndrome affects you, so that you can stay on track to meet your goals, to keep your calendar under control, and to manage your stress. Doesn't that sound lovely? So let's jump into the different tips on how you can manage shiny object syndrome. So the first one is to clarify your goals. So you may be tempted to get new ideas when you don't know what your short and long-term goals are. So how do you know that? So first, you have to understand what's important to you by defining what is important. And you can do this, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, by doing a values exercise. And if you haven't completed the values exercise, just go Google. Brene Brown has a great values exercise. There are millions of hits on values exercises. And then this is my definition. So values are used as a lens to make important decisions, such as what to say yes and no to avoid shiny object syndrome. And I'm not vilifying shiny object syndrome. I just want to make that clear. I'm just asking us to manage it because it can get a little unruly. When you go through, and the idea of the values exercises, you're going to look through all of these lists of words, and you're going to choose 3 to 5 value words. So like words that represent values of what's important to you. And you're going to take your time with it because you want to identify the words that like viscerally in your bones feel right for you. And examples of these values can include honesty, integrity, authenticity, faith, family, health, adventure, and so much more. And it's interesting that you might say, well, I've already done my values. I did my values 5 years ago. My opinion, I believe that you should review your values list on an annual basis because your values, like what is most important to you, your life, your situation can change over time. And let's say that you're in a season where you have younger kids, right? So, like, your family is really probably very important to you. But then, when the kids are out of the nest, maybe adventure is important to you. Maybe you want to double down in your health. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe that one is a big one for you. So as you can see, as your life circumstances change, your perspective changes, and as a result, your values can change. The second tip, which we've also talked about on Brave Women at Work, but it bears repeating, is to leverage your word of the year. So I have shared in an earlier podcast at the beginning of the year, I have two words of the year because again, I have shiny object syndrome. I can't even select just one. So I have two words. So my first one is woo. So woo, to like really go into the spiritual side of my life, to really not ignore all of that part of my world because it has a tendency to take a back seat and that's not for me, that's not where I want it to be. So woo is one of my words. And then the other one is energy. And I'm say that, and that's why I gave you the tip at the beginning of this podcast, is also a reminder for me to mind my energy and my energetic management. And so if you've not done a word of the year, you can also Google word of the year. And as we're recording, we're in February. We're not in like December of 2025. It's a little late then. Then you start looking at your list for 2026. But you still have time. You still have time to choose your word for 2025. It's not done yet. And so the reason that word of the year, so just like the values give you the lens and the decision, those 3 to 5 words of values. What's the most important to you? The word of the year also can change, but the word you select is kind of the frame over the whole year. It's the theme of the whole year ahead. And so this theme can help you determine your goals. So I gave this example in another podcast, but let's say that one of if my goal or my word of the year is knowledge, and it's not this year, but let's say it's knowledge, I might have a goal around reading X number of books. Well, this year, that's not my goal. My goal is energy and woo. That's the themes of my year, and those will determine my goals of the year. So if you haven't done your word of the year exercise, you still have time. You still have time. Go back and go to Google and you can find it, and then you can use it as your theme of the year. The next tip is to determine your short-term goals and make sure they're bite-sized pieces. So now I'm thinking about candy because I like sweets. Bite-sized pieces. So if you think of the mini Milky Ways or the mini Three Musketeers, you get at Halloween, you're like, oh, if I just have one, that's not bad, right? That's not bad. I can have just one of those, and then one becomes 10, but that's a whole other podcast. But what I will say is that you want your goals to be in bite-sized pieces. And to do that, you're going to want to make sure you do that annual plan, and then you break it down to your quarterly plan, and then you have your monthly plan, and then your weekly plan. And if you're not that like planner type, just set some time for yourself, like on a weekly basis on your calendar. And I'd like to do it on Fridays. So Friday afternoons, most people do not really want to meet or talk to you. They really want to get like on to like at work. They want to get onto their weekend. So that would be a great time to just do some planning. Like what are the short-term goals you want to do in the next week? And then if you want to blow it out, then like plan for the next month. And you can just schedule time. So time block for that amount. Because as you know, what gets planned, what gets measured gets done. And if you just let your like days and weeks like take you over, you know what that feels like. It feels like you're being hit by a bus. I've been there. And that doesn't feel good. So start putting your planning blocks on Fridays for your weeks to make your bite-sized goals, right? For your next day, your next week, your next month. I'm also going to caution you not to add, I used to do this like monstrous to-do list. And a lot of my clients are starting to do like a big top 3 a day. And then they try to eat that elephant, eat those, get those goals done, like, whatever time. Like if they're an early morning person, they do it in the morning. If they're mid-afternoon, it doesn't matter when it's done, but they just try to like set like like 2 to 3 goals. I have a client that even does like one at a time, like one big rock at a time. And that helps her, maintain clarity. And then she adds the next one after she gets excited and she gets done with that goal. So as you see the successes, we continue to like build momentum and we build confidence as we're putting our goals into bite-sized pieces. And then what you do is you do a reflection on the last week. Remember, every Friday. And then you can do a reflection on your month and a reflection on your quarter. And when you do your monthly and your quarterly goals, same deal. So if you have your big goals in the overarching kind of schema of the thing, then you put, okay, what are the like action items in the month of February or the month of March that I'm going to use to actually hit those goals or further them along? The laundry list for me is very overwhelming. So if you do it in bite-sized pieces, it'll make it just so much easier for you. So part and parcel with that, the next tip is to reflect on your long-term goals and idea fit. So long-term goals fit into that category in my mind of 3 to 5 years. And so the big question to ask yourself with your new idea, right, your shiny object is, how does this new idea fit into my longer term professional and or personal goals? Another question you could ask or journal on is, does this idea detract from my long-term goals? If so, how? Does it detract from my long-term goals? If so, how? So for example, if your goal is to retire in the next 3 years, and then you see this beautiful new home that you're like, ooh, I want to upgrade homes. I'm going to, get this really awesome house. And it's going to be a big mortgage. That is an obvious one, like no kidding. That's going to detract you from your retirement goal. But maybe your goal has changed. But stepping back and looking at the big picture to say, what is my long-term goal and how does this next shiny idea fit or not fit is really important. The next tip is, when a new opportunity or idea is presented to you, ask yourself the following. How does this support or compete with my goals? Which is similar to the last one. And is this something that is important to take on right now, or can it wait? And this last question is like really tough for me. What will need to go on my planning list to make room for this? Or even simpler, or simply, what will need to go on my calendar to make room for this? That is really tough for me, everybody, because I have that angel and devil on my shoulder saying my angel's like, no, 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 don't take on more. The devil's like that ego, right? That'll say, oh, of course you can. Of course you can take that on. And there's never like taking something off. It's always just additive. It's like adding, 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 which makes it crazy. That's crazy making. So think about it this way. This is the concept of idea delayed gratification. So just like we might delay purchasing a new item, I have a weakness for Amazon for a few days to determine if we truly need it or, where we are with it. We can do the same thing with ideas. We can delay them and then decide. So if someone presents a new idea for you, and I'm going to just give a shout out for my people pleasers out there that are listening, you might feel like this overwhelming need to say yes to the idea. So let's give you even a smaller idea. Hey, can you bake? Can you be part of the bake sale? And you're like, oh, that would be so fun. New idea. That's cool. I want to be more involved in my kids' stuff, but you're completely slammed at work. You don't need to say that you can commit to that right now. You don't. You don't owe them that unless it's like absolutely mandatory, which is not ever really the truth. You can say, hey, can I get back to you tomorrow? Thank you so much for thinking of me. Can I get back to you? And then you give yourself the grace and the space to make the right decision for you. I never did that. I always was like, yeah, immediately. I felt this like crushing pressure to make a decision. And sometimes, or many times, it wasn't in my favor. And so now I'll just be like, hey, thanks. Can I get back to you tomorrow? Or can I get back to you in 2 days or whatever? So think about delayed gratification for new ideas. The next tip is to create a future ideas list. So to reduce the feeling of missing out, you can create a future ideas list. So in the corporate speak, this is called the parking lot of ideas. I like air quotes, the parking lot. And so this is really hard for me as well because I struggle with patience. Do you struggle with patience? And I want to like do all the things I want to do them now. And so to do this, you're going to need to understand that that new idea, that shiny new object will be there and you can come back to it later. And it comes with this need for discipline, which I'm still cultivating because I don't want to wait. I want to like do it now. I'm so excited about the new idea. I just want to jump in. And I read this book that I love. Okay, so it's going to sound like I'm vilifying this book. I want you to read this book. I think it's beautiful. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is one of my favorite authors. And it is, like I said, it's a great book, but it kind of ruined me for the whole new idea concept. And I'll tell you why. So Liz Gilbert, she said, when inspiration strikes, like when this creative like buzz hits, right? The idea comes to you, you should do something about it because the new ideas don't wait around forever. And I'm like, scarcity, like I got to get to the idea. And so if you don't implement on your big idea, someone may do it for you. Ideas don't wait. So they're like, she kind of, I think she thought they were like butterflies that float from person to person, just waiting for someone to take advantage of them. So if you think about like if you're at a butterfly farm, the butterfly is the idea and it just like flutters to your shoulder and it stays there for a little bit. And then if you don't do anything with it, it flutters away. And that kind of ruined me because I was like, oh no, I've got to do something. So I'm going to give myself compassion and grace live as I'm recording this and just like cancel that idea and accept that we cannot do everything all at one time. It's just not possible. And we can let the idea just sit there for a little bit. And the reason we can is because so what if someone else implements that same idea? When you get to implementing it, it's not going to be exactly the same because it's not going to have your voice. Just like there's a million podcasts, but this is my podcast, right? Or, for you, like what's your project? What's your thing? How are you doing your job? It'd be different than I would do it because we're different people. And so that's the reframe for me here is that it's not going to have your spin, your voice, your experience, your fingerprint. Like it's not going to be the same. So how about you? It's just like a rhetorical question. How are you with putting new ideas to the side with the understanding that they may be there in the future? Just something to think about. The last few tips here are together with the future ideas list, let's move to creating and holding boundaries for ourselves. So all this kind of connects. So again, if you're in a busy season, it's not a time for a lot of new ideas and taking on all the things. So the question here is, when would be a better time to take advantage of the new idea? And then we talked about the boundaries, like what would be the boundaries you'd have to set for short-term goals that you've identified? What would be the boundaries you would have to set to support your longer-term goals? What do these boundaries even look like to you? What happens if you cross them yourself or someone else crosses them? And I included this concept of a boundary buddy. I mean, we have to be self-accountable to our own boundaries, but maybe you struggle like it with it, boundaries like I do. So what? Like ask a friend that might be willing to help you. Be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm tempted to take on this new idea. And they can be like, time out. Didn't you tell me you had these goals? Or you can get a coach. You can, work with someone else that's more neutral. But a friend always will help. I mean, a good friend would be a great boundary buddy if they're willing to support you and you them likewise. And so I'm calling myself out here. I can set boundaries for myself, but then I fall into that pattern where that I told you the ego comes in. You could do this. You've done a lot before. Take this on. It's fine. You've always been fine. And then, I say yes. And the impact is my calendar gets out of control. I feel more stressed. I miss appointments by accident because I'm completely double booked. And then when it gets really bad, and I don't know, maybe you're going to be like, wow, she's crazy. Like other insane things start happening because I'm not present. So my keys will go in the refrigerator or the appointment times get messed up because my mind and body are going like a million miles an hour and it just gets out of hand. So this gives us that time to say, what am I going to say yes to? What can sit in that idea parking lot? Like what is the priority? So all of these will help you if you're like really attracted to the ideas like I am. And I mean, we've talked about this. This is how our bodies break down and how we get sick because we are in dis-ease, right? Disease is short for disease. So, how do we commit to the boundaries that we set? Here are some suggestions for you. We can time block our calendars in advance. So when we're tempted to take on something new, we visually see that there isn't any space. So if you're a visual person and you see like it's all blocked up and it's all like accounted for, you can't take on anything new physically. So then we physically must remove an appointment from our calendars because it's full of other priorities. And that's going to make it more difficult to do. So if you're visual, this is a great suggestion. And then we've talked about the boundary buddies. We've talked about dear friends or third-party resources for that. We've also talked about the new idea on ice. So you put it kind of in like the layaway cart, like where you're like, am I really needing this or I really don't need this? And then the last thing is just to reduce the amount of new ideas that come in the intake. And it's very hard because we are bombarded by marketing and information and all the stuff. So just like you would go on like maybe a shopping ban, maybe you go on an idea reduction. I'm not going to say a ban. So that means that you might not read a lot of new online content or like kind of just take a social media fast, or maybe you take like a little vacation from all the books. And so you avoid information on ideas that might be of interest or triggering to you. It is difficult. Like I'm an information gatherer. I'm a learner. I'm a lifelong nerd. I'm a nerd, right? I said a nerder. I'm a learner, but I'm also a nerd, right? I was thinking about my husband. He's like, you're such a nerd. I am a nerd, self-proclaimed, and I'm proud of it. So just reduce the amount of information. It may help you in the long run. Avoid hanging out with other shiny object syndrome enablers. So here is another one, and this is difficult. So we attract like. So I'm a shiny object, an SOS sufferer. So just like someone who might be addicted to work or drugs or alcohol or anything for that matter, it can be anything. If you're addicted to new ideas and fall for shiny objects time after time, you can attract other people like that. So I have a few people in my life right now. If I'm like, ooh, they like enable me to do more. They enable. So if I mention the idea, they get excited for me, then they encourage me. And then there's no turning back after a while because I'm too deep into the implementation. But we never pause to say, oh, that's a cool idea, but do you have the bandwidth for that? There's just the idea that's floating and we're just off to the races and we're just going. So I would say, my friends, be mindful of the company that you keep when it comes to shiny object syndrome enablers. And if you find someone that like struggles with it too, you can say, hey, we're going to both be boundary buddies for each other. But if you still struggle, you may just want to take a little bit of a break. You may want to take a break from that discussion or even that person for a little bit while you're getting your footing on your boundaries and you're getting your footing in these areas so that you maintain your health, you maintain your calendar, you maintain your sanity, your stress levels, all of those things, because you don't want to like go and take on all the ideas and then you're in disease, right? So the last one is to develop that discipline muscle. So to recap once more, we're going to delay that idea gratification. I didn't mention this before, but reward yourself for holding your boundary. What's something, we said we're starting and ending with that here, that maybe you go and get a pedicure, or you take some time for yourself to walk in nature, or you write in a journal, or you just laugh with your kids. Whatever makes you feel joyful and rewards yourself for holding the boundary would be awesome. We talked about boundary support and then those visual reminders for what you are and are not committing to in this season. So there you have it. So I've given you 9 tips. Many of them overlap, but they are unique in of themselves. So the 9 tips for managing shiny object syndrome so it doesn't create chaos for you at work and home. So let's recap the tips in case you're taking notes or just want to hear them in summary one more time. So clarify your goals. Leverage your word of the year. Determine your short-term goals and break them down into bite-sized pieces. Reflect on your long-term goals. Ask yourself questions when an idea presents itself. Create a future ideas list or that parking lot. Hold your boundaries. Avoid hanging out with any shiny object syndrome or SOS enablers, and develop the discipline muscle. Well, I hope today's show was helpful for you and valuable and insightful. It certainly was a great reminder for me, so thanks for joining me. And until next time, show up, manage your shiny object syndrome, and be brave.